Welcome to the Nightly Rant
with
your
hosts,
Mike.
and Toria.
This is the show where we examine society from a sarcastic point of view.
If you like insane conversations, this is definitely the show for you.
Let's get into today's topic. YPN people, I don't know about you, but I love helping out a friend. That's why I want to shout out my friend Brian Little and his podcast, Your Favorite Blockhead. This is the only show that manages to weave together peanuts and MMA into one heck of an amazing podcast. You can find Your Favorite Blockhead wherever your favorite podcasts reside and at yourfavoriteblockhead.com. Do me a huge favor and listen to Brian's show. You'll be entertained and you'll help out a friend. Now, as I said, let's get into today's topic.
Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation, for it comes only once to a people. And those in world history who have known freedom and then lost it have never known it again. Those are the words of Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional and angry. This situation going on in Canada has been bungled so badly by the government. I mean, it's almost as if Joe Biden is running the operation over there. It's that bad. Nothing's worse than Joe Biden. Nothing.
Nothing is worse than Joe Biden.
No, there's nobody who's worse than that guy.
Justin Trudeau is actively giving him a run for his money.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Who knew? Who knew? So most people probably know about this, but let's kind of give them a quick rundown of what's going on.
Truckers paraded across Canada in their trucks and parked their asses in the city of Ottawa, which is the capital city of Canada.
Capital city.
And now they've been sitting there for, as of today, 2 weeks.
Yeah. They were actually saying 22 days since it started.
So they've been sitting in Ottawa for 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're talking, the whole thing. That's kind of crazy, okay? But I think the reason you're hearing a lot of silence from the U.S. side about what's going on,
I'm hearing silence,
is because, yes, the Biden administration is with Trudeau and, stomping out the problem, and he's not going to speak up against Trudeau. He's just going to kind of pat him on the back for doing something.
Well, and the left-wing media is all like, oh, these right-wing extremist Canadians are a fringe movement.
Well, yeah, but what can they do? They can't admit that those people have a right to do what they're doing. Because if they did that, then they would have to go back and change what they said about the BLM riots that were blocking city streets. People were fighting in the streets and streets were burning and people were bashing windows in. And don't tell me it didn't happen, because I saw it with my 2 eyes.
Yep.
So shut the bleep up about that. You people who always say, oh, you don't know that happened. I was at these protests. They were peaceful. Nobody was stealing anything. No one was burning anything. Okay, sure. So the left-wing media showed support for a left-wing group by lying about them. Sure.
I mean, I'm sure that there were protests that existed that didn't burn things, but let's be real. A lot of those protests were very violent.
Yes. Billions of dollars worth of damage. And whether you think they were justified or not, and you try to use that whole argument about, oh, you're valuing property over human life. Mm-hmm. I think that's a piss poor thing to try to compare.
So the moral of the story so far is Justin Trudeau is an asshat. Joe Biden is a slightly larger asshat. But if Justin Trudeau keeps making bad decisions, he's going to be the world's asshole.
So Bozo Man doesn't know what to do, meaning Trudeau.
Except babble.
He doesn't know what to do, so he starts putting his foot in his mouth constantly. And decides he's going to enact the Emergency Powers Act. What? It's like the nuclear bomb. He didn't do anything other than hide from them and then put the nuclear bomb on them. So, where was the negotiations? Where was the due process?
For a piece of Canadian history, this Emergency Powers Act that he's invoked is a newer act that replaced the War Crimes Act in Canada.
Right. And that's what people are screaming about because it's not supposed to be used like this. And by the way, there's a vote coming up on Monday about whether it was legal or not to invoke it. So what the cops are trying to do now is quickly work under those powers. And that's what I want to talk about.
Sweet Jesus. He vowed to piss me off more than I've ever been pissed off in this podcast. So prepare yourself.
You know what a Clydesdale horse is, right?
Yes.
Big, huge, in the Budweiser commercial horses. They're like the bodybuilder horses.
They have the biggest feet.
They're huge. They're like the Arnold Schwarzenegger horse. You know, that's what they are. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Do you want to know something funny that you mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger? Terminator was what was on Terminator Genesis was what was on in the movie room at the gym this morning.
Stupid movie room. Anyway.
Okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So Arnold Schwarzenegger, is there, and he kind of wins the race. He's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's
flippy clopping along.
Well, these horses were used by the police. They're riding those horses, the Clydesdales, and they just ran people over with the horses, cloppity clop, right on top of people.
So people were injured, died.
Some are probably dead. Who knows? We don't know yet.
Do you know where?
Somewhere there in Ottawa, where all the tension is building because that particular province can't seem to handle its business.
Well,
They think they know what they're doing, but clearly they don't know what they're doing. And it's disappointing to me because I gotta say, I've seen a lot of protests in my life. And for a protest the size of this protest, hell, screw that. For any size protest, it's the most peaceful protest I've ever seen in my life. They're singing, "Oh, Canada." Jiminy Crickets, man.
And yelling freedom.
And chatting with one another and patting each other on the back.
They're the friendliest protesters I've ever seen.
It's crazy. So that's, one thing. But now, Clown Man, Mr. Castro, that's right, I said it. He wants to take people's pets away if they're part of the protest in any way and is threatening to euthanize their pets. What the hell is wrong with the Canadian people that they're not rising up right now against this modern day Hitler shit? Because that's what that is. I'm sorry, that's extremely fascist. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, it is so fascist. I could agree with everything else he says. That one thing that he does ends it for me. That ends it. You don't freeze people's bank accounts and go after their children and their pets because you don't agree with their position. That's weak. That is so weak.
It's like going for the gonads.
Exactly. It's so true, people. And I'm so angered by those two things.
Do you know that this is the first time in my life I've ever been ashamed to be Canadian?
A lot of people are saying that, and it's sad to me. It's sad that a country that everybody who you met, they had their reasons for not living there anymore, but they were proud that they come from there.
I moved here. I got my permanent resident status. But since the day I moved here, I have said that I'm keeping my Canadian citizenship no matter what.
It's never been a point of discussion.
It is too important to me to not have.
It's never been a point of discussion.
Well, yeah, I know. We've talked about it, but it's never been something you pushed for.
Yeah, it's never been a point of contention, I should say.
There you go.
That's a better word.
It's never been something I would consider not wanting to have. I identify as a Canadian.
Well, that's that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I have zero problems with that.
I'm so ashamed of the government. And
that's why I'm so ashamed, because of my attachment through you.
I have no shame in admitting who I voted for when I voted the last 3 times in Canada, but I can tell you what, I'll never vote for those people again. Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh.
Yep.
Suck 6 nuts, bitches.
Well, that's the thing. And that's what someone on one of the videos I was watching was saying. Doesn't Trudeau know that the whole world is watching and he can't hide his behavior?
And the world has never had this kind of eyes on what Canada is up to. Like, I've never seen Canada in the world spotlight like this.
You're not wrong.
But I guess the last time Canada was like, woo, we're big and strong and super fancy was World War II. And there was no big mainstream media then.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
That's the last time they did something newsworthy and exciting.
Canada didn't have a big part to do with like either the Korean War or the Vietnam War?
Not at all.
Not at all.
World War II, Canada was the, you know how,
I know.
You know how the United States kind of sat back on their laurels and they're like, we're not getting involved.
Right.
Canada was like, fuck yes, we're getting involved.
That was Reagan's inaugural address. Part of it, obviously.
I'm so disappointed in the government of Canada. For a country who likes to call themselves the True North, strong and free, they're being the True North, weak and fascist.
That, I couldn't say it better myself. I feel very strongly that the approach is fascist. It's we're going to continue to punish you until you comply. And, you know, they're willing to let you go as long as you want to go, but you're going to keep losing things, permanently losing those things, by the way, not temporary. So eventually, I think what happens is people are like, you took everything. What? You know, screw you. You took everything. You're not getting this. Sorry. I know you want it, but you can't have it. Sorry.
Yep.
I mean, and that's why fascism never ever could work long term, because it comes to a point where it just dries up. There's nothing left for it to eat up. It's sad, but true. It just is. But I'm annoyed by Trudeau's cavalier response. I mean, he made some big bozo comment to a Jewish woman, accusing her of being a part of a group of people who wave swastikas around.
Yeah, and she's another member of parliament, by the way.
Yes.
An elected person. She then stood up and was like, oh, I'm Jewish, by the way. And then she shit on him.
Yeah. Oh, she let him have it.
And it was a champion level shitting. Like, she should win an award for how hard she shit on him.
It was incredible, wasn't it?
Yes.
I really I really liked it. I liked how strong she was about it. But yet at the same time, she wasn't offensive. I thought that was kind of cool.
She wasn't rude.
Exactly.
She just defeated his arguments.
And that's why her point came across so clearly.
Right.
And that's why I've been thinking a lot lately about things like that, and like, you know, making sure that you understand why you're doing something. Don't just do it because someone said to. Make sure you understand why you're doing it. And maybe the direct way that you were going to do it isn't the right way. So you switch.
Yep.
Open-mindedness, you know, and you have to be, I think the problem that people like Trudeau have is something that I remember one of our earliest long conversations, and you were really adamant about this. You said people need to remember history. And too many people don't. They don't bother.
What are they going to do? Round these working class Canadians up and put them in internment camps?
Right. And that's the thing you have to worry about.
Canada's put people in internment camps before.
Yeah.
It's that nice dark spot on Canadian history that nobody likes to look at.
Yep. And that's, you know, that's a fear that you have. You know?
My favorite is not how Justin Trudeau is acting, but Jagmeet Singh. He's the leader of the NDP, which is the pro-union party. Like, that's their union this, union that, labor, workers,
so
higher wages.
You'd think they'd be on the side of the truckers on this.
They're working class Canadians.
Yeah.
You would think. Those are their people.
Yeah.
But he's not.
It's just a misplay from top to bottom.
Right-wing, fringe Muslim haters. What about these people who are yelling freedom and waving their Canadian flags around?
Says those things.
Says that they are fringe Muslim haters.
Right. Because neither one of those two things seems very fringe.
You watched that live stream for hours. I saw Canadian flags. I saw people laughing and joking with each other. I heard people yelling freedom.
Oh, I watched for probably 6 hours total today.
I think I heard 2 or 3 truck honks as I've meandered through the house.
Yep.
I saw some province of Quebec flags.
Yep.
I didn't see any Confederate flags like all the mainstream media likes to insist. I didn't see a single swastika other than on day 2 of these protests when I saw somebody with a swastika on their arm being arrested.
Who was probably a counter-protester.
And even if he wasn't, he was arrested. The problem was handled.
Right. Well, exactly.
I don't give a shit who that guy was. The swastika was wrong.
Right. Exactly. It was handled the correct way. End of story. You know? I mean, that's all you can say. But I think taking a close look at what you're doing and why you're doing it is the key to avoiding all that crap. Because if you knew why you were doing something, you wouldn't have to wonder, well, is it now do I go to the left or the right? You'd know just instinctively. And I think we'd screw that part up because we get emotional about the thing, you know, whatever the thing is that you're thinking about. It just, I don't know.
Trudeau is currently reminding me of China when they gunned down protesters. I mean, beating them to death with a horse, gunning them down, that doesn't seem so different to me.
Yeah. It's not a great optic.
Mm-mm. But it's also not being reported anywhere on the news.
And I also think that if Biden supports that, there's going to be a massive bloodbath at polls.
This is not a carriage Joe Biden should hitch himself to.
Right. But they're kind of dumb enough to do it.
I mean, there is purpose of the U.S. government. Well, there is, I guess, reasoning for the U.S. government to have some say in what's going on in Canada right now. They've shut down 2 major border crossings. The Ambassador Bridge does 25% of trade between Canada and the U.S. And Coots is on like 15.
Well, more than likely, my guess would be they run political ecosystems the way you'd run a business ecosystem. You have an agreement for supply and demand and how that supply and demand is to be delivered. And part of that is those openings, the border crossings being open for the trucks to get through.
Right.
So that's now being violated. So we get to step up and go, boo.
Exactly. The government of the United States needs to have some say in this. I get it. They should be speaking up. They should be advising, maybe here's something you could try to help. We need to get this border open. But the houseplant is not helping. The houseplant is just hitching himself to dumbass Trudeau.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but that's what he's done since he took office, was hitch himself to some cause. And even though the cause was going to crash and burn, and you could see it was going to crash and burn, instead of finding a new strategy, he didn't even bother to own the one that he had. He would point the finger to somebody else and blame them for it. You know, like that last time it was Joe Manchin's fault. It's not Joe Manchin's fault. It's your fault for not doing it the way Joe Manchin would vote for it.
Right.
He's the one in a position of power, not you. You need him. He doesn't need you.
And he lost that battle.
Yeah, and that once he lost that battle, he doubled down. And that's the thing I think is dumb about these world leaders that are there these days. They double down.
He went and did an interview saying that Joe Manchin was saying a different thing to the press than he was saying to him in his office.
Yeah.
And Joe Manchin went, nope, this is what I've been saying all along.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Manchin never changed his point of view. Not once.
Not from the very first time he was interviewed. I watched, I think it was on Tucker Carlson's segment or whatever. They put together, you know how they like to put together pieces of interviews?
Yeah.
So they took pieces of interviews of him saying the exact same thing from when this bill was introduced to when he killed it.
Well, you know why you know this, right? It's because as a politician, he's chosen a cause. That's the cause.
That's the hill he's dying on.
And then now he's going to have every talking point down.
Yeah.
And so when you say something, he's just going to be like, oh, that one. Kabam. Here's the answer. Blah, 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 blah.
He's poising himself to run for president, though. I think so. I don't think it'll be the next time, but he's poising himself to run for president.
Who?
Manchin.
Oh, of course. Of course he is. Of course he is. I still think that making an upper age limit for
he's old
president
too.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, well, it just makes sense because it keeps it so that the ruling power is closer in age to everybody.
Though I will say, in Joe Manchin's defense, he does seem more in touch with his constituents than most people.
Well, yeah, he voted in the manner in which he thought his constituents would want him to vote. Right. He didn't vote in the manner that his party wanted him
And when
to
they
vote.
polled people in his constituency, they agreed.
Yeah, well, and they love him.
Yeah.
Because of that decision that he made. They love him. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? You know, like, why wouldn't you love him? And I think I admire him, even though, you know, he's a Democrat and pretty hardcore one at that. I admire him for taking a stand and being consistent with it. And it shows the power of being consistent, because he was so consistent with it that in the end, even though the president of the United States flat out lied about him in an interview.
Yep.
He had a nice, calm, clear comeback.
Yeah, and he was chill the whole time. He didn't get all emotional about it.
Didn't need to, because the facts were on his side. So he didn't have to get emotional. But it is impressive that he didn't get emotional.
Wow, he's 74. And he's been in office since 1982.
Oh my gosh. Time for him to go,
Sweet Jesus.
These people, you know, there needs to be term limits, people. Like, this is ridiculous, the craziness. But we're going all over the place in this episode.
Yeah, we gotta go.
I think we should wrap it up by saying this, okay? Fascists of the world, we're watching. We're very disappointed. It's this country over here and us on the nightly rant here. And we're disappointed as hell. We're disappointed as hell. You need to clean up your act. You need to clean it up, and you need to clean it up fast. It's disgusting to watch, so knock it off. With that, we said...
Good night, everyone.
Hasta la bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Nightly Rant.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Google Play.
If you didn't enjoy the show, please just ignore that previous request for a rating.
This has been a Yogi's Podcast Network production.